All right, everybody, welcome to the Vigilant Path Podcast. Today I've got with me Dylan Thuras. Dylan, I met at the Grandfather Mountain Highland Games uh, just it seems like a couple days ago. Dylan is the co-founder and creative director for a company called Atlas Obscura. Wanted to dig into that with him about how that kind of got started. He's also a New York Times author, best-selling author, podcast host, man about town, world renowned. Wanna kind of just get to know, let people kind of get to know Dylan and how you started this journey as really an entrepreneur, and just
Yeah,
dig in.
totally. Thanks for I'm happy to be on the show, Eric. It was really fun to meet you at the Highland Games. I got to see you practice, get back into kind of competition just a little bit, just to kind of get your feet wet a little bit again. And I got to try and like fail at a bunch of stuff, which was really fun. Yeah, it was awesome. It was really cool. So happy to talk about Atlas and how that started and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. So where did this inspiration begin? I think you told me you had kind of a media film background academically, and then this kind of started as maybe a side project.
Yeah, I went to school for kind of creative arts, media. I learned how to edit video in college, and I
Mhm.
thought my plan was to get into filmmaking. It's what I'd wanted to do since I was like a kid. So I did do that. Like right after I left college, I was working as a video editor. I was working on a lot of documentaries. I went freelance, so I was sort of from a pretty young age working for myself. I struggle a little bit when I'm in a really kind of rigid or like I don't I like to be my own boss if I can. And so that's what I was doing, and then I ended up working for very like 7 months on a documentary about Paris Hilton, and this is back in like 2006, and it paid great, but I was just like I was so burnt out at the end, and I was like, this project was dumb, and what is this really what I want to be doing? And it so happened that around that same time period, a couple of other things happened. I followed a very strange and unusual blog because at this time, like social media didn't exist. It was blogs, basically. I followed this weird blog written anonymously called the Athanasius Kircher Society. And it was all about kind of weird and esoteric stuff from history. And I just really liked it. I thought it was great. It was kind of similar to work I was personally doing, creative work. And so when this blog put out an ask and said, would someone want to help me put on an event? I wrote and said, yeah, I really like your work. I'm interested. Let's meet up and figure it out. And so I ended up meeting with the creator of that blog, a guy named Josh Foer. We were both probably 23, 24. Um, and we really hit it off. We put on this event. We sold out this auditorium in the city of New York, college, CUNY, City University of New York. Um, we were able to get people to come and check out this weird project we were doing, and it was really fun. And we felt like, oh man, that's awesome. What are we going to do next? And so we started talking about that. And at that same time, I had already planned with my girlfriend at the time, Michelle, to move to Hungary. We had made this big plan that we were going to go to live in Budapest and teach English as a second language. And so I was leaving in like 2 months to go do that. And so Josh and I started talking about travel and what I was going to do while I was there. And we realized that all of the stuff that we were most interested in seeing, that we both like really loved, were these kind of weirdo projects, crazy outsider art projects. Someone in the countryside of Hungary had built their own castle themselves, like by hand. And we were like, that's awesome. And it's like not in any of these guidebooks. And these weird medical museums that had these incredible collections of wax anatomical models, these like beautiful full-size 2-scale models that were created for doctors before they could when dissection was basically still illegal. So instead, you'd look at these models and, you sort of be able to kind of take them apart. They're beautifully made. So we realized we loved this kind of stuff, and it just was not on anyone's radar. It was like you really had to go digging to find it. And we said, oh, maybe it'd be cool if we made a travel site. Originally, we called it the Encyclopedia of Wonder. And 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 so we started that. And while I was living in Hungary, I wrote my own blog and spent a long time sort of learning how to write, teaching myself how to write. My girlfriend Michelle taught herself how to be a photographer, and so we made our own thing. And then I wrote, the first few hundred entries for Atlas Obscura. And so it started, and it launched when we came back to the States in 2009. We launched the website. It really started as a passion project. I was still working as a freelance editor. I had a part-time job at a college helping university kids with their projects, their technical stuff. And so, what ended up happening is that we ended up sort of finding an audience, and it pretty quickly started taking up all of my time. And then became, okay, this kind of worked. How do we make it pay the bills? And so then it was sort of like, all right, little by bit, we figured out how it could pay just me in a kind of part-time way. And then eventually we figured out, okay, we can make enough money to bring on a couple other people and free my time up actually to do sort of sales, because I was doing all the writing and editing. That didn't really leave any time for actually making additional money. But eventually we were kind of able to, one by one. And in a funny way, that's what it's been like for the last 15 years, is sort of each new thing, each little expansion creates its own problems or challenges or needs to grow the business, And so since 2009, which now is the ancient past, like this has been the project. We've grown a bunch. We run a bunch of group trips around the world. We wrote these books. We launched the podcast. We do these video series. It's sort of through many different phases we've sort of been at this problem solving thing, kind of what's the next thing? How do we get over this hump? And I think for anyone who runs a small business of any size, it's a familiar experience because you're never done. It's like very rare that you're like, I got to figure it out. Everything's smooth sailing, whatever. I'm sure there are a handful of people who that's how it is. But for most people I know who run a small business, you're a problem solver, and there's always new problems. And that's kind of the nature of the thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. What was it? What was it like just kind of managing that stress during that period in your life and just taking that dive and saying, okay, I'm going to start depending on this income from this side project to support my livelihood?
I was very stressed out during this period. I was very stressed out. I remember when there was a period where we had the first four years of the business, we raised basically no money. We had no cushion in the bank whatsoever. We had raised a tiny bit of money at the start, basically to pay for someone to build the website, for a developer to do all the stuff that we needed it to do. And, but that was it. And so we just didn't, and that was from like friends and family and, $2,000 checks. It was small, really little. And so I remember at one point, maybe 3 or 4 years in, we had grown a lot. We had now like a staff of 7 people. So it meant we had a real payroll due every couple of weeks. And I just remember waking up in a cold sweat about cash management, about being like, okay, payroll's due in 3 days. We've got a check coming in a week that will cover it. But what do I do between now and then? I've got a $10,000 swing I've got to cover. And I don't have $10,000 in my bank account. I don't have $100 in my bank account. Like I'm paying myself like well below minimum wage. And so there was just this period, and I think this remains true. There are these periods of maximal pressure, like you go through a squeeze. And I think in moments like that, you just have to trust that you will get through it, and that you are your own kind of greatest liability. Like freaking out and sort of quitting or giving up or just having a meltdown. Like that is actually your biggest sort of danger. And if you can avoid that stuff and kind of stay level headed about it all, you'll find a way through. Like you kind of always do. And I guess one day you don't, right? And then maybe the business ends and that's a real bummer. But like you got to just keep going. Like you have to assume that that's not what's going to happen and that you, and don't, and stay in a kind of optimistic mind space and be creative, okay, where can we borrow $10,000 from? Like call everybody we can pay them back in a week. We just need someone to say, I trust you. And so, yeah, it's a stressful period, but we got through it. And then we raised money. And then we brought in a CEO, which that was its own whole new kind of stress, which was for me, I had been running every piece of the day-to-day business for years and had grown up with it. I was still in my 20s. Maybe I just turned 30. Maybe I turned 30 at this point. And so bringing in someone else to run the business was like, that was a totally new kind of challenge and shock to the system. So yeah.
Yeah. What's that like going from wearing just about every hat in the business and having your fingers in everything that's going on to having to kind of trust somebody else and share the power, and just trust that they'll get it done and know that you've kind of now got to focus on your piece of the business.
It was really hard. It was a totally different kind of hard. I was excited to bring in a CEO because I was like, we need help. Like it's a bunch of stuff I don't know how to do. I would love to get someone with a lot of experience to like come and help guide this. And it came with, part of it was that fundraising was easier bringing in somebody from the outside with experience, right? Because it was sort of like, look, we've got a steady hand, whatever. But in practice, at the time, what I ended up, it felt like I described it as being, because we had about a staff of 8 at this point. I described it as being broken up with by 8 people at once, because it was kind of like people, go, get out of here, kid. my son should be in bed. Everyone had a new boss. And that's the nature of it. That's what we were hiring this person to do. Nothing was wrong with it.
Right.
But there was a kind of an emotional effect that I wasn't expecting. And I felt suddenly very unsure of myself. I felt very unsure whether I should even stay in the business. I felt kind of unclear about what. Okay, so now what is my role? What am I here to do? How am I gonna? And my role became creative director. So I had, I had, it's not like I didn't have anything I needed to focus on, but it took me a long time to get totally right with that. I think in hindsight, I think it's thank God we did it. Because I also think that there's a real possibility, like, had I just sort of kept going, it's easy to kind of smother the things there's this thing that I think founders, entrepreneurs, people who start something and they grow it, become so precious and so intertwined with their sense of self that it gets too close. And then everything, they become, sort of control freaks over every aspect of it. They can't hear advice from, or they just think they're the only person who could do it or know how to do it. So it was hard. It was a hard experience for me personally and emotionally, but I really think it was 100% the right thing for the business. And what it actually allowed me to do, and I don't think I realized at the time, but I had just had a kid. I was burning the candle at both ends. I was just working nonstop. And it gave me permission. It gave me a way to actually not make my life 100% about work. My life, I still spend a lot of time, the business is a big part of my life, but I think it gave me the sense that, okay, other people can help do this. They do have knowledge and skills I don't have. And it just took me time to sort of figure out what my real strengths were and how to apply them to the business and how to let someone else take other pieces of the business. So I won't say that it was quick. It probably took 2 years for me to be totally right with it. Because I didn't always agree with the strategy and stuff. So there would just be fights about like, I think you're wrong. I think you're making a mistake. Like, we're going to go out of business if we keep doing it this way. And so, yeah, it's part of that's sort of the nature of the thing.
I mean, the way you describe it, it almost sounds like you kind of had, you'd invested so much in the ramp up period to kind of get things off the ground that it almost kind of became part of your identity. And then,
100%. I mean, it still is, to be honest. Like, it still is. Like, it is. It's in there. I think I have a little more space and distance, and I think I have a bit more of a healthy. I'm not sort of like the kind of workaholic that I was, or I still work a lot, but I'm not quite as I have a much better balance. But no, it felt like I had a real identity crisis. That's right. I had a real sense of like, if I'm not this, and if I'm not this whole thing, if somehow this guy is now, an important part of this thing, then where am I? What am I? Do I have to go start a second thing? Do I have to, I had sort of these real questions about, could I hold on to that sense of self-identity and sort of share?
Who's Dylan now, right?
Yeah, totally. Exactly. Yeah.
So you get through this period of time. The business gets off the ground. You bring in someone that can kind of come in that has that operational strategic experience so that you can kind of focus on the things that you're really good at.
Yeah.
What happens next?
Well, we do a bunch of expansion during this period. We grow the business a lot. We raise some money. It was like a time when, you could raise money more easily than you can probably right now. So we grow. Our book comes out. We've been working on a book for 5 years. We started in 2011, and the book comes out in 2016. Book does great. It actually really connects, and people are, we have a lot of stories of like that Christmas where two people open each other's gift and they've both bought each other the Atlas Obscura book. Like a cool, so it was really crazy to have it sort of suddenly be this thing was kind of out in the public world in a big way. We did a big media tour. I had to learn how to be more sort of like comfortable being on camera. We did some like live national television, which is like crazy stressful experience. Like, and we start a trips business. We start taking groups of people on some of these excursions and to some of these places that we write about. The company's all about sort of hidden wonders, unusual places, interesting kind of off the beaten path travel. And so, we start leading people. And this is a good example of like new challenges. We run a couple trips and they're terrible because we've partnered with a kind of a trips company that was doing trips for like alumni organizations, and they're just like, there are too many people. It's 40 people. They're on a bus. This is a bummer. No good. And so I really pushed for us to try an experiment. And the experiment was that we were going to take a group of about 16 people on a trip to Bulgaria in the winter to see these abandoned communist monuments. And they have a name. They're called spomeniks, and they're these huge, like 3-4 story tall, concrete brutalist structures. You should look them up. Look up abandoned communist monuments, and you'll find a whole genre. And I just had this feeling that I was kind of obsessed with these things. I thought they just looked sort of amazing, and so I had this hunch that other people would be. And we sold out the tour in like 24 hours, and then we took the tour, and then it was like, okay, maybe this could work. And so we start that business. And, little by little, we grow the company, but we're actually still really struggling in some ways. The company's grown a lot. We've hired a lot more people. It's now a lot more expensive to run the business. So we need to make a lot more money. And, we're learning hard realities. We're learning that the trips business is a hard business with small, thin margins. We're learning that we don't have the right kind of sales team to sell the kind of big media packages to brands that we need to. And we're struggling. We're not quite sure how to do it. And so we spent time in this space. We spent time where it really felt like, we're going out of business every day. You know what I mean? Where you're watching your bank account go down, 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 down. You're looking at the staff of people and you're just like, man, I don't know how long this can last. Because it's just expensive to run this business like this. And so the, we yeah. and I'll say, at a certain point, our previous CEO left, and we realized that we kind of needed a different set of expertise. So we brought in our second CEO, who's still our CEO, named Warren Webster, who came from more of a business, sales, digital media business background. And and then it was all about, okay, we've kind of built the brand, we've built the audience. Can we build a really rock solid business underneath it? So that's really been the last 4 years. And we've managed it. We made it through COVID, we made it through the pandemic. We made it through the big kind of capital crunch. It got much harder to raise money over the last few years. And we're a business. We're a business, with all the ups and downs and normal stresses that entails.
So you grew from you and your business partner to 50 employees?
55-ish, 50 and change. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's pretty incredible. I mean, what have been your key takeaways in that journey of kind of going from the startup phase to now you have 50 plus people that depend on your leadership? What?
Yeah, it's a good question. There are real different scales of organizations function really differently. A 10-person business is really different than a 30-person business, and a 30-person business is different even than a 50 or 60-person business. Small increases in scale can change the dynamics of a business in a big way. That's definitely something I've really experienced. At 50 plus, it starts to get less personal. There are people you don't talk to very often, or maybe almost never, because you're just not intersecting with. So you got to go out of your way to sort of, make sure you're trying to stay in touch with folks. Sometimes you don't know what's going on as the business grows in size. And I can only imagine what it's like working at a business with 5,000 people. Like, their coordination problems become really real. Your left hand doesn't always know what the right hand is doing. And then people are working across purposes. I think I've learned that like a couple of really strong hires can transform an organization. We have a number of people at Atlas that have been able to make parts of the business work or run their departments in ways that are just fundamental. And I think you realize that certain people have. I've met a couple of people that I would just consider to be like savants within their skill set. I work with someone very closely who is one of the best managers I've ever met in my life. And management is not something you think of as like it's sort of squishy. Everyone kind of thinks they can manage people, and everyone kind of, it is such a profound skill. And a lot of people, including I think myself, aren't amazing at it. You have some good parts about it, some bad parts. And so to meet someone who's really, really skilled and really capable, you just sort of go, oh, okay, that's what this looks like. Like, wow, that's a big impact. And we have a salesperson that we work with who is just a beast. She's so good. She's just, and so supporting those people, getting them into the right roles, and making sure that they can kind of flex those talents in a way that it's nothing more frustrating for everybody than kind of having someone with a really strong skill set kind of in the wrong position. So they can't really do the thing they're good at, but it's hard anyway, there's, I don't know, those are some things. And just and again, there will be new problems. You can't solve all the problems ahead of time. You just have to wait. They just show up. You go, oh, right. Okay. This is a problem. This is an issue with this particular business. We thought this thing would work. It's not working for these reasons. Okay. Here's why. Yeah. And I think maybe we do. I think we may do one too many things. We do a lot of things as an organization. And I think there's like a sort of a maxim in business, which is just like you should do one thing and do it really well. But we're a little too like, I don't know. It was started by like two weird artsy creative guys who like doing new things. So focus is important. And I think sometimes we suffer from lack of we should be maybe more focused than we are. But
I mean, maybe so, but it sounds like you guys have done a really good job of just kind of understanding that it's okay to trust other people to step in and be experts at what they do. Yeah. And sometimes we have to, give up a little control and just trust others to support the mission of what we're trying to accomplish and understand that there's going to be different work styles to achieve those things. And you just move forward. But I want to back up a little bit because I feel like we kind of glossed over something that I think is pretty powerful. You had told me off screen that you had a diagnosis several years ago, and just want to touch on that and how you worked through that in the midst of all the other stressors that you dealt with and growing this company.
Yeah, when I was around 30, so actually very similar, big transitional moment in my life. Bringing in the CEO, we were about to have, I was talking to Michelle, who I'd been in Hungary with, and we had gotten married, having kids, and then on a flight back from London for work, I'd been in London. Michelle had come with me. We were throwing these events actually all over though. There was one in London and one in Seattle and one in Chicago and one in LA and one in New York. And they were all happening on the same day. It was this big project we were doing with Google, which at this point was like, holy moly, that's such a big deal. Like, whoa, we're getting paid by Google. They were releasing this new app called Field Trip that we were a partner in. And so, it was just this crazy project. And we're flying back from being out there and doing all this planning and meeting with people. And I started to get all this like weird kind of tingling around my lip and my face. And that's weird, whatever. And then like the next day I started to get really dizzy. And I thought, that's not good because I pretty quickly was like, this is like, that's neurological because those two things are sort of unrelated, but like you're getting weird sensory effects and you're getting vertigo. So, I went to a doctor. I didn't know what's going on, but I kind of thought, I need to check this out because the dizziness is pretty serious. Then I went to the doctor and they almost knew immediately. They sent me in for an MRI to confirm it. But basically they came back and said, this is you're having an attack, an episode of multiple sclerosis. You've got multiple sclerosis, and like this is basically probably the first episode you've had, but this is now a thing that may happen. I was like, shit. It was scary. It was scary because you just didn't know. There's a lot of unknowns. MS is one of these diseases that is it's kind of many things at once. It can take a lot of different routes. So you can get MS and then you can have kind of intermittent attacks for your whole life. And sometimes that means you lose a little functionality, but maybe it's not that bad because every time you get an attack, basically what happens is your immune system is attacking the myelin. It's basically the sheathing on your wires. Like if your nerves are your wires, they're covered in this fatty substance that keeps them. But yeah, basically it's like a wire. It's like keeps them grounded. It keeps them from messing up. And so your immune system starts attacking that. It thinks it's bad. And then it does permanent damage because depending on the area it attacks, people with MS will have a lesion, this attack in their spinal cord, and they'll wake up and they can't walk because it's basically attacked a piece of their body in their spinal cord that is controlling is the area that's like attaching their brain to their legs. And so, there's MS can take a lot of different outcomes. So it was a really scary time. And, To be honest, I want to say I had some amazing, way of managing. I actually just buried myself in work, to be honest. Like I just ignored it. Like I went to the office, I made Michelle walk with me the 3 blocks from my apartment to the office building. And I needed her because I was so dizzy that if someone wasn't holding me, I was like, I was all over the place. So,
Mhm.
but I wanted to keep working. We were really busy. There was so much going on. It did not feel like I could take a break. And in a weird way, I think that was good in the sense that I just sort of said, okay, this is happening. There's not that much I can do about it. I can take I can take these steroids that's what you take when you have an attack. They give you basically an intravenous steroid treatment. But what else am I going to do? Like, I just, I'm not going to stop my life. I'm just going to try and work and keep going. And then after the first attack, which lasted for a few weeks, like it got better. And I tried some medications and the medications sucked. They had like crummy side effects. I had this pill that I had to take twice a day. And every time I took it, I'd get like really red and itchy. It sucked.
Mhm.
And I had another attack like 2 years later. I actually lost a fair bit of vision in my right eye because it was attack on my optic nerve.
Mm.
And you know, again, I think my reaction to it was kind of to be like, well, this isn't really in my control. What is in my control is my home life, my work life. Honestly, that in a weird way, it really spurred me to have kids. My Michelle and I had gotten married a few years earlier. We were living a happy domestic life. We were going to our early 30s, but it felt like, oh, like I don't, what am I waiting for? I don't know what like my future looks like. And this is something that is important to me. And so why am I not doing it now? It really underlined a sense of urgency, actually. Urgency to sort of do some of the stuff I wanted to with the business, urgency to do some of the stuff I wanted personally. The real upside, or the kind of like the happy ending of this story, is that not so long after that second attack, um, I switched doctors. I was able to go to a big the New York has a big MS center that specializes in it, and they were able to get me on a different medication that was still brand new, but was looking really promising. And so I started this new medication. It's basically an experimental medication, and it was way easier to take because it's delivered intravenously, but once every 6 months. So it's like I'm not trying to remember to take 2 pills every day that like have an awful, annoying side effect.
Mhm.
Um, and it basically since then, and now it's been like God, it's been like 8+ years, a little more. This medication, it's like a little quiet miracle actually in the medical world. This medication, not just for me, seemingly for everybody, seems to actually be doing just a tremendous job of stopping the attacks from happening, which is really where all the damage comes from.
Mhm.
Uh, and so for the last long time, I haven't really had any real issues. There hasn't been any other like loss of function, and it's like, and at this point, it's just not even a big part of my life. It's like something I think about once in a while, but it doesn't keep me up at night. And I think I'm just someone who like maybe I can compartmentalize well, but even from the beginning, it was kind of just like, okay, I don't have much control. So what am I going to do? I'm going to control the things I can control, and focus on my goal, what I want to try and do with my time and my life and what feels important to me, and to stay positive. I'm a kind of my friends and my wife will tell you I'm sort of an infuriatingly optimistic person at times. Uh, but it hasn't so far, I don't know. It's worked out. Like so far, I'm that sense of optimism and kind of solving problems as they come rather than thinking a lot about them in advance. I mean, you have to do some thinking, obviously, but just not dwelling on them in a kind of worrying way and just sort of just okay, what's the next thing? Um it's been a really helpful way to approach many things in life, work, health, personal stuff. I don't, yeah.
Do you think, maybe you have kind of a superpower for just staying focused on the present and not being, like anchored to the past or anxious about the future? You're going to deal with it one day at a time and stay grounded.
I guess so. I don't know. Yeah, I'm a Midwesterner. Midwesterners tend to sort of have a certain, optimistic or I don't know. Yeah, I just, I would rather deal with the problem in front of me than the problem that I'm creating. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I'll create new problems for myself, but they're like some dumb problem. They're like, I need a different compost bin and I've got to build it. And I'm gonna be obsessed about making the perfect compost bin. But like that's fun. That's like you give yourself a problem that you can solve, and then you can solve that problem. And the problems you can't solve, there's just no, it doesn't feel good to spend a lot of time thinking about them because you can't do anything about it. So it's just like maybe I'm just good at compartmentalizing that stuff. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's pretty clear you're a pretty resilient person, given all the things that you've managed to just deal with. I mean, that's big. What kind of advice would you give to folks that, I mean, because life happens, right? I mean, you've got the work stuff, you've got to wear a lot of hats, you've got to trust a lot of people. Sometimes you got to have hard conversations with customers or hard conversations with employees. What kind of tools do you think are helpful for folks? Is it, is it having a mental health advocate, to lean
Yeah.
on? Is it coaching? Like what do y'all, what do you,
Definitely friends and family for me are like really important. I mean, for sure, I had really strong support in my partner and Michelle, in friends, longtime friends. I had people I could turn to and really talk to. I also think there's something in like not being afraid to be foolish in a way. Like I don't like I feel like real strength and real confidence derives a lot from the ability to, it's not even not worry what other people are going to think about you. It's not exactly that. It's about the ability to sort of be uh sometimes kind of be vulnerable or not have it together and be okay with that, and sometimes to do stuff that like you look dumb doing it because you don't know how to do it, or you're learning how to do it, and or you want to ask questions. You're like, what, how does this work? Like, well, I don't understand. You said something I don't understand. Like, I know somebody is really sharp when I'm talking to them and they say something and they say, wait, can you go back? I didn't understand that. That to me is a sign of real confidence and real intelligence, because it shows you that someone is actually listening. They're trying to understand. And I don't care whether it can be, maybe they don't understand something that I assume everyone else understands. But the fact that someone will say, wait, go back, I'm not sure I get that. Like, can you explain it more? To me, that's a confidence, that's a strength, and it's the confidence to not be afraid to look foolish, and the intelligence to sort of know that like it's worth asking that question and it's worth trying to understand that you actually didn't really get what was being said. To me, that is a really important skill to have and to hone. And whatever, I'm guilty of nodding along or saying, oh, huh, like, oh, yeah. But when I do it, I know I'm fucking up. I know I'm like, you know what I mean? I'm doing this thing and I don't want to do that thing because I'm embarrassed, because I'm embarrassed to look foolish in this situation. And that's a real alarm bell to me that I'm not that I'm undermining myself. You know what I mean? I'm undermining myself if I'm worried that someone's going to think that I'm a dummy because I don't understand something, because I'm not. I'm stealing from myself in that situation. You know what I mean? Like I'm the one who's losing out. Like, so
Yeah.
that's for me like a big thing.
Yeah, I think to your point, I think a lot of folks they let fear drive them too much instead of just cultivating curiosity.
Yeah,
Like it's okay to look foolish or to not know something.
totally.
It's not okay to pretend you know and
Yeah.
not understand. I mean,
And and the world is full of surprise and mystery. And no matter how much you learn in your life, you know so little. And everyone you meet knows something that you don't know. Like maybe it's just about their personal experience, whatever. But like, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't, like it was really fun to get to know you, the Highland Games, because I think, it was just the process of just like learning more about you and your life and your life story and your relationship to the games, and to your own sense of self and your own sense of identity. It's like really valuable, really interesting, and I feel like um I would prefer to be asking you questions.
well, maybe I'll come on your podcast
Good.
next.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That'd be good. Yeah.
No, but no, I mean, I think that's kind of the fun of life. Uh, gosh, I've told friends before, like I think the fun thing about talking to people is, I mean, you don't know what hidden genius they've got.
Yeah.
Like somebody, it doesn't matter what their socioeconomic status is. It doesn't matter how you meet them, how they look, whatever. Somebody is going to surprise you with their genius. And I think if we just do a good enough job, being genuine and doing like what you described, just man, I don't understand what that is. Why don't you tell me a little more about that? Teach me
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
then let them feel like an expert for just a few seconds. They will surprise you with what they can teach you.
The art of conversation is being a good listener and a good questioner. You know what I mean? It's not,
Mhm.
that's totally. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of do that for a living now, right?
Sometimes. Yeah. A little. I like it.
Has
It's fun. I love talking to strangers. I love talking to people and just what's the deal? Yeah.
yeah. Well, real quick, I know we've been going for a little bit, but I'd love for you to just talk a little bit more about this this project of what y'all have been working on with travel and how that's helping stimulate local economies.
Yeah, sure. So Atlas Obscura does a bunch of different stuff. One of the main things we do is we've got this website and this database of almost 30,000 places all over the world, a lot domestically, but we cover the whole world. Um, and there are these weird, unusual locations. A lot of them are people's small businesses. One of the things we really come to love about this is kind of getting to know some of the people running the Banana Museum out in California. And it's like these two people who are like, what if we open a museum about bananas and everything's banana yellow and it's whatever. But it's all kinds of stuff. It's all kinds of different stuff. And so we do that. And then we also sometimes we do work with big brands, with, automotive companies or spirits or whatever, normal kind of advertising campaigns. But we also work with tourism bureaus. So what I was doing out there at the Highland Games was a project that we do together with Brand USA, which is the US, it's America's tourism bureau. And they exist to basically encourage people from the rest of the world to come and visit. So they're encouraging Canadians to come and drive down and spend some time in Maine or New York. They're encouraging people to fly from Spain or Japan and come and visit America. And so, yeah, we've been doing this series for a number of years now called Small Town Big Story, where we go to places all over the country, and we often there's like an event or a festival happening. But I try to participate usually. I try to learn the skills at hand. I tried and failed a number of the Highland Games competitions and athletic events. And it's just been great. It's honestly been one of the joys of my life this last few years. We've done 17 of these episodes now, I think. And I was in New Mexico in a chili, not like chili, the bowl of chili, but like hot chili peppers, like the full
Mm-hmm.
peppers, a chili pepper eating competition, and out in the fields, like with farmers who grow hatch green chilies. I've been in Wisconsin at the Lumberjack World Championships trying to like log roll. It's just brought me all these places, and it's been such a joy. And we do some other stuff too, but that's one of the main things. And I think, my one of my really big goals with Atlas has always been travel is such a good experience, but often what happens is people, they have their bucket list and they want to go do this thing that they've seen and they're very familiar with. And so they want to go, and I don't know, they want to go to Venice, right? And they go to Venice in July because that's when they've got time to travel. And they get there, and I will tell you that Venice in July is a hell. It's a hell for everybody. There's 60,000 tourists a day in Venice in the summertime, and it's a town with 55,000 people living in it. So there's literally more tourists there than residents every single day. And it's just crowded and it's hot. It's not good. And it sucks for the traveler. They don't have a very good experience. They're trying to, but it's just not that nice. And then it sucks for the people who live there because they're just, and what's so funny is there's like 500 other places they could go in Italy that are amazing, mostly empty of tourism, would be glad to host a tourist, would be glad to get the attention, the money, whatever. And so a big part of Atlas is just encouraging people to sort of maybe go a little farther or somewhere a little bit different. You can still do the big bucket list stuff if you really feel that you will not be happy with yourself until you've, whatever, gone and seen the Mona Lisa in person. Fine. You'll be there. You'll be in the crowd. It's little. You'll see it. You'll take your photo. That's all good. But like, okay, then where are you going to go next? Like, can you sort of go somewhere maybe a little bit more adventurous, a little bit farther off the beaten path, because it's going to be a better experience for you as a traveler, and it's better for the world. It distributes that money, that the negative impact, the positive impacts are both distributed in ways that are good, and it supports, when you go to someone's weird local museum, their little local business, their crazy art project, you're also supporting all these like independent creators and business owners out there. And that is also, it's a good, it's like, yeah.
I want to throw a curveball question at you, inspired by the TED talk that I watched today that you did. What would you say, some of the, would you say that there's a mental health benefit to that curiosity or feeding that curiosity and seeing the world and meeting different folks? Like, how do you think that affects our well-being overall?
There is a mental health benefit to taking a different way home. I'm not joking when I say this. There is a mental health benefit to varying your routines in small ways. There is a mental health benefit in giving yourself a small but achievable goal where you're like, you know what? I've never been to this town 30 miles over. I'm going to go there and I'm going to get lunch and then I'm going to come home. And that's all. That's it. That's all I'm going to do. That's a trip that basically costs you whatever lunch cost and some gas. And it is amazing how invigorating and rejuvenating even the smallest kind of sort of variation in routine, little adventure, time for kind of open exploration where you're like, I'm going to take 3 hours and I'm not sure what's going to happen. And maybe I'll go on some hike and I don't know, I've never done it before. What it does is it's sort of like, a lot of mental health disorders are addiction, depression, anxiety. They're associated with rigidity. They're associated very strongly with rigidity of thought, and rigidity of behavior then, sort of becomes downstream of that. Rigidity of self and thought is like we build our own prisons. You know what I mean? Like the worst prison you will ever find yourself in is the one that you make for yourself, because you know just how to build it, baby. You know the perfect size, you know exactly
Hmm.
what's going to drive you crazy. And so sometimes just giving yourself permission to do something that, and it can feel a little anxiety inducing at first, right? Like new experiences can have that little sense of I don't know. But I think that's part of the thing, because if you get over that and you do it and you find like, actually, that was kind of nice. I liked going to that town and having lunch. It was fine. It just teaches you that you're not in this little box, that there are options, that life has optionality, that you're not trapped in the ways you think you're trapped. And so you don't have to get on a plane. You don't even have to leave your state. You literally can do a lot in a 50-mile radius from where you live. But it's about giving yourself permission to surprise yourself or to challenge yourself, or literally, like I said, just driving home a different way than you normally do, or stopping off at some coffee shop that you've never been to, or going for a walk at a random time. I went for a night walk the other night. It was like 11 o'clock. It was late. I should be going to bed.
Hmm.
But it was so nice outside. And I thought, I'm gonna go for a night walk. And I was like, Michelle, I know this is weird. I'm putting on my shoes. I'm gonna go walk around the neighborhood. It's dark out, but it's so beautiful. The moon's out. It was great. I came back feeling unburdened. I felt like, like I needed, I don't know, as my head was thinking about a lot of stuff, and yeah, it's just, it can be a small thing, but anyway. So yeah, I'm a believer.
Yeah, no, and I don't have to sell you on this, but we talked a little bit about this on the mountain during the shooting, but film shooting. But but yeah, I mean, just that there's something about being in nature, just something it does to you. I know you mentioned that you like to ride your bike to work as much as you can, and just vary your routes and just keep yourself stimulated. There's a concept called neuroplasticity that I've always thought was really neat. I mean, uh, bone weakens. You take an astronaut into space. They have to do things to keep their bone density up
Yeah.
because they're no longer under stress. Muscle tissue atrophies if it's not stressed.
Yeah.
Um, the mind is designed to grow and adapt, and we need to feed it. I mean, we're meant to experience the wonder of the world, and
Yeah.
we're a lot of us are missing it. And it hit home for me when you talked about that, the rigidity of some of those dysfunctions that happen. One of the things that happens to people when they get depressed is they don't want to move. They stop. They
Yeah.
shut down, and it's very hard to be sad when you're around happy people, and it's very hard to be sad when you're out meeting new people, and you're staying curious, and you're growing.
Yeah.
It's hard to gather moss that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you can combine a little exercise, a little nature, and a little like free exploration, a little sort of a sense of play, I think that's just like, that's such a triple combo.
And I mean, and think about, a lot of times we think about our pets, like, you want to take your dog out and let them experience different scents because it's one of the ways they process the world. But,
Us too.
yeah, we do too. I mean, there's certain sounds of nature. There's certain fragrances you get when you go walk on a hiking trail, or you go visit a waterfall, or whatever it is. Like it does something to you,
Yeah.
kind of reconnects you and maybe grounds you, helps you just kind of resettle and refocus.
There's a lot of evidence. I mean, this is, you can sort of feel the vibe of this, but there's so much clinical evidence about exposure to nature, about exercise, and about, sort of new experiences as all ways of encouraging kind of happiness, of ways out of feelings of being trapped or hopelessness. It's tough when you're in that place. It's really hard. It's really hard to convince yourself that this is going to be a good thing for you, because it's so hard to get over the kind of switching states. But it's true. I mean, it doesn't take that much. It doesn't, a little a small dose can really help.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think if folks want some inspiration for places to visit, they should probably visit Atlas Obscura.
You take some weird adventures, people. Like go, find whatever's the closest to you and go check it out. It's surprisingly fun. It really is. And like getting there is half the thing. It's partially about what's there, but it's also partially about like, where is this thing? How do I get there? What is this? Like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Like, that's part of the whole thing. That's like part of the whole joy of it. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, I guess I'll wrap us up soon. I will definitely drop some links for the folks that are listening, so they can just kind of tour around some of the different things that you've done, your podcast, the titles that you've authored. And definitely want to encourage folks to, just kind of get out and meet folks and see the world and, be a tourist in your own town.
Yes, totally.
That's
Thanks, Gary. It's really fun. It's nice to get to know you. You're like, man. What a lovely person you are.
Yeah, same, man. This is this has been fun. I'm sure there's plenty more to come.
Totally.
A little nervous to see what comes out in the edits from Grandfather, but
oh, it's gonna be so good. Oh, it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna rule. I'll say once we got something to show you, I'll send it over. But
awesome.
Don't be nervous. It's gonna be so good.
Awesome. All right. Well, everybody, we appreciate you listening. Definitely check out Atlas Obscura. I'll put a link in there to his TED Talk as well. He dropped a lot of wisdom in that talk. Appreciate you being on, Dylan.
Thanks, Eric.
Looking forward to hearing more about your adventures.
Likewise.